Welcome, Spartans, to Halo TV Plus, part of Evolved, your home for Halo. I am your host, Oran, and on Halo TV Plus, my guests and I recap Halo's original TV show, Halo the Series, and we discuss its contents and unique canon within the Silver timeline. Joining me again to discuss Episode 9, Transcendence, is Colin Perkins. Welcome back to the show.
This is the penultimate episode. Whenever you have a chance to say penultimate, you have to say it.
You know what? You're not wrong. It's the penultimate episode of Halo TV Plus Season 1.
Correct.
Because we will be back for more, for sure.
Faux show.
Yes. As you know, Halo TV Plus produces a commentary podcast episode and an analysis podcast episode to accompany the Halo the Series episode of the week. This is the analysis episode. In a moment, Colin and I will highlight key scenes from Transcendence and discuss its effectiveness on screen while adding core canon knowledge for context, or green timeline canon.
Yes, ooh, it works. It happened.
Maybe I should update my script here. Earlier in the week, Colin and I released our commentary episode of Transcendence, where we discussed the whole episode while watching it. If you missed it, I recommend listening to that episode first before listening to our analysis, as we kind of cover some other information that we're just diving deeper into now. But it's up to you. Let me tidy up some housekeeping before we dive in. If you're new to the show, welcome. Halo TV Plus is part of Evolve that hosts a variety of other Halo shows: Podcast Evolved, Mission Debrief, Builds with Blocks, Halo Book Club, and Halo Headlines. Evolve also partners with the podcast HCS Pro Talk, where Josh and Will discuss the latest information within the competitive Halo scene with an emphasis on community every week. You can learn more about all of those shows on our website, evolvedhalo.com. As Halo TV Plus is a relatively new show, I ask that you rate it and leave a review. I greatly appreciate all the feedback and suggestions from you, the listener, to improve the quality of this show. And as we're nearly done with Season 1, I am very much interested to learning about suggestions about moving forward with Halo TV Plus for future content. We would like to take a moment to thank all of our patrons for their continued support. Thank you guys so much.
You guys are awesome.
Yes. Your contributions allow us to continue making new content every single week, and that's not an exaggeration. I mean, I just listed like 7 or 8 shows, and thank you guys. It means a lot. You keep us going.
I'm raising my beer in my left hand and my new beer in my right hand.
There you go. If you're not subscribed, our patrons receive a variety of exclusive rewards, such as early episodes, unique swag, access to our podcast soundtrack, and more. And you can head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolve to learn more. Now, before we dive into the analysis, let's do a quick episode synopsis and details. Beaten and battered and betrayed, John 117 leads the Spartans on a suicide mission to find the Halo and save humanity. It was directed by Jonathan Leisman. It has a runtime of 48 minutes and 16 seconds, and the air date was May 19th, 2022.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why do they need so many directors?
How many directors do you think they have?
Didn't that Otto Bathurst guy direct a couple?
Yeah, he directed 2.
And then there was another person that directed a couple. Like, I feel like there was 4 or 5 directors.
So there were 4 directors. You have Otto Bathurst, who did episodes 1 and 2. Then you had, I think his name was Roel, R-O-E-L, Roel something. He directed 2 or 3 and 4. Jonathan Leisman did 5, 6, 8, and 9. And then there was another director, I don't remember who. It might have been one of the other ones that we just spoke about, who directed episode 7.
Yeah, I think there was a woman that directed that one. Yeah.
So the reason they do that is because the TV producing machine always keeps moving, but the episodes need a certain amount of prep in order to prep the episode, and the directors need time to make decisions and stuff, so then the different departments can then, specifically the art department and like locations department, to like find locations and judge up the different locations that make them sets and things like that. So for the Halo TV show, they adopted a production schedule known as a block shooting schedule, where they shoot episodes in blocks. And so episodes 1 and 2 were shot together and produced together. That's why you had that director, Otto Bathurst, direct those episodes. While they were filming that, you have the other director a role for episodes 3 and 4 starting his producing and pre-production on those episodes while the main production is in production and filming episodes 1 and 2. So then once episode 1 and 2 are in the can, they can then transition right into episodes 3 and 4. Maybe there's only like a week or 2 weeks at most of like downtime between the actual filming. Ideally, you don't want any stoppage in filming because of like camera rentals and all that kind of stuff, and you need to keep the crew employed and all that kind of stuff. So like my TV show, for example, we shoot 22 episodes in a year, and our department is kind of split in half to where we have an evens episode crew and an odds episode crew, to where the odds episode, if they're pre-producing it, then they're with the odds ADs, which are the assistant directors. They're with the odds directors, and they're getting the early decision making together. So then when the even episode that we're currently filming wraps, we can then roll right into the next episode, and there's no stoppage in filming dates. So we still film 5 days a week, sometimes on Saturdays, and we just kind of keep the movie machine pumping. So that's why on TV shows you'll have multiple directors, because you're producing so many episodes so quickly. The directors need time to make their decisions for the episodes, and that's why the showrunner is the title. They're the one who, how do I word this? They're
the show?
They're, not runs the show, but like they're the one with the through line creative vision. Like they're the ones who kind of maintain the consistency between all episodes.
So they're interfacing with all the directors and saying, okay, this is the thing, this needs to happen, this needs to be conveyed in your episode.
Or they'll talk, maybe the director will want to make some type of decision, and the showrunner will be like, well, it's established in X, Y, and Z episode for this, or we have something planned in the future, so we want to kind of give this sort of angle. So they kind of reel in the director and guide them, a little bit, while still trying to allow the director to direct the actors and, create something of their own. On some shows with a lot of directors, you'll have what's called a producing director, where that's kind of a person between all of the different directors and the showrunner. So that's what our show has, because with 22 episodes, we probably have like 15 different directors, but you have a producing director who directs a few throughout the season, and the showrunner who help maintain the show's consistency, so it's still one identity, but you have the flavors of different directors for the different episodes.
I love that insight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a lot of work, is what it sounds like to me. That's what I heard. That's a lot of work.
It is quite a lot of work, yes. Now, there's this Halo show. I don't know if you heard of it. They just came out with the last episode of the season.
That was neat.
Yeah, it was really cool. I enjoyed it.
They shot some aliens.
I just wanted to say that. Yeah, they're dead. Space Marines prevailed, and they lived to fight another day.
They did. Mm-hmm. They're floating in space.
Let's see. I guess let's talk about John. He's kind of, the main character, and we talk about him on every analysis episode of Halo TV Plus, and we get a conclusion to the arc of the season. There's definitely going to be more character development that John will go through in season 2, and we'll learn what that becomes at a later time. But I want to know your thoughts. I kind of touched a little bit on it myself in the commentary episode. But Colin, now that we have a full season arc of John, and I think the number one sort of message that Stephen Kane and Kiki Wolfkill and some of the other creative individuals have been touting about the show is how they really wanted this show to be a character-driven drama with some sci-fi action, and they wanted to tell a Master Chief story. So what we got in this episode, and then you can kind of take from the season as a whole. What are your thoughts on that goal and what was achieved or not achieved and kind of shown to us?
Yeah, I don't know. Do I start here or do I end here? Let me start here. Okay, the whole season feels like an origin story to me.
Yeah, I can get that.
It is Master Chief's origin story from the Silver timeline, because they don't really talk about what he did prior to this season, really. They hint at it like, well, Chief just goes and does the stuff. This isn't the Chief I know because he took his pellet out. Now he's acting all weird. So we don't really get much background on what happened prior to this, other than he was kidnapped and, all that other stuff, right? That he discovers. But like between when he entered the Spartan program to when the season starts, we don't really know anything. So the character development that's happened here is, to me, what they're wanting to present to the viewer as an origin story. Where this episode specifically touches on that is it's the origin of his partnership with Cortana.
Okay.
He rejects her right away in the season. He has other things to do to find out, and he has other interests. Some, palpable interests that he wants to pursue. And then because of how the story was written, he then, at the beginning of this episode, he needs Cortana, right? He says that specifically. Say, Cortana, I'm gonna need you now. And then, where the show ends is them merging in a little bit different way. Well, it's a very different way than what we're used to, them being like a partnership. And in Mission Debrief and other episodes, we talk about them being, they're not, Cortana's not a sidekick in Halo. Like, she's his partner. If it was just John without Cortana, Master Chief wouldn't be as powerful as he is in the games. If it was just Cortana, she couldn't do all the stuff that she does without having Chief there. Halo, at least the games that you play, is truly a partnership between Chief and Cortana. And here in this final episode, they are trying to convey that. They're trying to say these two characters are kind of one. Right, they're kind of one thing that need to be together in order to maximize their output.
I don't know how much I really like that.
Yep.
In terms
right.
of like on paper and like you just kind of saying it, yeah, of course. Like Cortana and Chief are synonymous, basically. But how they left it, where basically the humanity that we had in Chief all season has now been seemingly dissolved into nothing. Like, John went from finding himself and having a character to where John doesn't actually exist now at the end of, as far as we know, obviously anything can happen in season 2, but like the way it is portrayed is that there's a risk that John doesn't come back because they've never done this before. And Halsey's master plan was to always have Cortana and seemingly future smart AIs to take control of Spartans or whatever the next stage of evolution is, to then ascend to be the next stage of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
But like the way that it was executed makes it just further distilling the humanity that we just spent the entire season finding. Now, I can see where in Halsey's mind, since she already is stripping the Spartans of their humanity by wiping their memories and giving them the pellets and stuff like that, to where having an AI take over and do this next stage of evolution, we're calling it, yeah, that kind of makes sense that they would lose even more humanity than what they've already lost. But I just find it kind of counterproductive for Chief to sacrifice all that, and then now we have this new version, this new variant of Chief / John that is now Cortana, John.
Chief Tana.
Chief Tana. Yeah, so it didn't really sit with me well, and that's probably my only gripe with this episode is the fact that like we spent this whole season, and I feel like there could have been other ways, other justifiable ways to make John more quiet, so to speak, so he's a little bit more like game chief, or have that trust in Cortana to where they are a unit instead of an A and a B. And I just I don't know. I guess I'm still digesting it.
Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed with that ending. On kind of just I feel like it just would have been more impactful and a stronger character ending if Chief just kind of did all that and still was able to trust Cortana and have this inseparable partnership of them finally working together.
I've heard people talk about, compare Halsey to Dr. Robotnik, or Dr. Eggman from Sonic, because, and just to follow this thread,
okay,
if she truly had an issue, again, this is this Halsey, Silver Timeline Halsey, if she truly had an issue with humanity not being able to ascend to be whatever they needed to be, it's a lot of work in order to do that, right? You have to, like, her formula is, okay, well, I'm going to kidnap people and then train them for 20 years, and then I'm going to make this AI clone, which we don't know how long that takes to grow, and then I'm going to shove that AI clone into this kid that I kidnapped now that they're 20, 30, whatever it is, and then eventually that AI is, like, that takes a long time.
It's definitely the long game.
Yeah, it's like, so why didn't she, like, what is would plan B be like, okay, I'm just going to make a bunch of robots and they're going to take over the world and lead humanity? Like, that seems like that would take way less time, So, like, essentially what she's trying to do, if you think about it, in this timeline, in the Silver Timeline, is turn humans into robots, into machines, into artificial intelligence, right? In order to ascend to that next stage of evolution, so that everybody thinks about the world the way that she thinks about the way the world is, right? It's that whole, like, sacrifice one to save a million thing, and humans have a hard time with that. It's just, I had a hard time with the where things were left with the Chief Tanda, Silent Chief thing. I totally agree. I think they can write themselves out of that in season 2 pretty easily.
Yeah.
The fact that, like, Cortana took over his body and did all those things, but then wasn't Cortana, like, she didn't like say hello to Kai at the end, right? Like, she could have said, "Hey, what's up?" But she didn't, because she's controlling his body. She should still be able to manifest herself the same way that she has been doing in the past. But she chose not to. And so as a viewer, you're like, you just so many questions. Like, what is actually going on? Is John still in there? Is he dead? So, and maybe they did that on purpose to, leave all those cliffhangers to be decided in season 2. But then that also brings me back to my question about the 10th episode that was going to happen that got cut. Like, at what stage in development did that get cut? Was that written? Was this the cliffhanger that we were going to be left on? Or was this the penultimate cliffhanger that would be then resolved in episode 10, and that would be another cliffhanger?
I'm quite confident to say, with really nothing to back this up, but just my hunch and my knowledge of the industry, I think episode 10 was cut far enough or I guess early enough to where the story that they had with the 9 episodes is the story that they, like, set out to make. And episode 10, wherever it fit, they had the time to adjust it to this story. I don't think it was a thing where episode 10 was supposed to be X and they chopped it and then had to, like, somehow Frankenstein, like, the last part of the season together without an episode. If anything, I feel like the 10th episode hurt the Quan and Soren story.
Yes.
Because that story was chopped in a very poor way throughout the season to where you could almost watch episodes 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9 pretty continuously. 4 ends and then 5 begins, and then 5 ends and 6 begins.
You don't need 7.
You don't need 7, and there's a little bit of a jump between 6 and 8, but like for the most part, like 4 to 9 minus 7 is like, a movie.
Yeah, I feel like that Quan story could have been integrated, but I don't know how you fit it into this last episode, but it definitely was left. It's left for the next season, that's for sure.
I feel like you can't integrate Quan's story into this episode without it really pertaining to this episode. And really the only thing I could think that like could be a thing is if you left the like monitor sequence out of episode 7 and you put it in this episode to where like, but again, you'd have to completely rewrite Quan's whole story, which is what I went into in episode 7 of our analysis and stuff, where like instead of her wanting to reignite the insurrection or the insurrection, you have her wanting to find this well. And like that is like that is her stories, to find this well. And so then at episode 7, you leave with her assuming this duty of like finding the well, and Soren leaves and they're in this good spot, and then you have a scene or two in this episode where she actually approaches the well and she meets the monitor, and like that would be a amazing cliffhanger for her story, because it gives her the closure, because this entire time in this rewrite, she's now fulfilling her father's final wishes to find this well. She escaped Venture, she escaped Soren, found a friend, found the Mystics, did all those same things, but like you just have a much more interesting story. And then now we find out what's in the well. It's this monitor. What the heck does that mean? And now we're excited on the edge of our seat for season 2. Whereas now we're just like, all right, I guess we'll find out what happens to Quan later, because we're not that invested in it. But the monitor thing is kind of interesting. So, but anyway, to kind of reel it back in a little bit, I feel like episode 10 wasn't missed that much. I mean, having another hour of television definitely could be useful, but at the same time, like there are other things outside of the Quan storyline that I do think probably could have been either not even touched on or wrapped up a little bit better, to where the 9 episodes we did get just could have been a little bit stronger. There's always room for improvement and stuff, and we can kind of get in through the nitty and gritty of stuff here and there, but my opinion is that I don't think episode 10 was needed, and I don't think it really hindered the final product that we had, but it could have been a very different show. Not a very different, but it could have been different if we had it. Is kind of how I'll leave it, I guess.
Yeah, they could have left it in a different spot, or they could have fleshed out a couple more story elements.
And I do think that in episode 10, I think would have benefited Quan and Soren more than the Chief Cortana story. But hey, we got what we got, so we'll have to play the hand we were dealt. Let's see. I don't want to talk about season 2 just yet. I'm also honestly sad that we killed McKee, and yeah, I felt that she had more story to tell. I think she had more of a purpose that they could have written. I like the fact that she and Chief are these equals on different sides of the playing field. The Covenant not having McKee, I think, greatly changes the dynamic.
Yes.
Because like in the games, all humans are reclaimers. So you have Tartarus and Truth and all these villains just kidnapping humans and
Right.
and using them.
Poor Lucas Browning.
Yeah. But because McKee and John are so specific in the Silver timeline, it would kind of diminish their importance if early on in season 2, they find another Blessed One.
Let me just comment on that really quick, because I did think about that as well. And again, I think they can get themselves out of that with some creative writing. The Blessed Ones can interface with the artifacts, but that doesn't mean that humans cannot interface with just Forerunner technology.
Okay.
So, like, when it comes to, like, metal stuff that the Forerunners did, which we haven't touched on in the show at all, like, maybe humans can still interact with that because they are still the reclaimers. But for some reason, this specific artifact stuff can only be, you know, the Blessed Ones. And then I know you guys talked about Gaishes in the past, and maybe there's some Gaish stuff going on in the background.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, they could kind of differentiate that line, you know, of what is a Blessed One and what is just everybody else. And they could introduce something next season that does something like that. But even still, like another point that I liked about Makee in the show, which I also feel reinforces the reason that she just exists. She's a human character that we can like relate to much more easily. So like now without her, like all of the Covenant are just these CGI aliens, and you know, they have to work a little bit harder for us to care about them. Whereas I cared about Makee. Yeah, I think she should have been a little bit more against humanity and not be all that close with John, but kind of close with John, but still really want what the Covenant wants.
She was a little too malleable and naive, you know, like she should have been very sure of herself that humanity sucks. Fuck you, humanity. And I'm just, you know, I'm going to play you guys. I'm going to have sex with Chief, and I'm going to maybe kill him in bed. But I'm going to like hold to my hatred the entire time, but she did not.
Malleable is the perfect word. I feel like she was a little too malleable. I would have preferred if she was a little bit stiffer. I mean, there is room for growth. I mean, I'm not saying she should have been 100% the whole time, but like, I cared enough about her to want her to make some of these decisions. And when she died, I mean, it made sense. Like story wise and kind of how it happened. Like it all does fit. But I just, and I guess I cared about her enough to have an emotional impact. But I could see, you know, some potential with her going forward that we're not going to get because she's gone.
Yeah, that kind of race to the Halo now becomes, oh, well, now I guess we'll find the Halo for the Covenant. We'll find the Halo because we're following the UNSC versus the other way around. I don't know. But overall, yeah, Makee, I was happy with her character and how she was portrayed. The fact that she existed makes sense to me. I thought the actress was great. You know, the sex theme was just kind of weird, because I don't think it was necessary. But you know, the way that they portrayed the connection overall was good. But yeah, a little room for improvement, I feel like.
Do you want to talk on Halsey?
Yeah, Halsey. I mean, like I said, I disagree with Josh's assessment. Something I want to touch on eventually, but I was able to watch this episode or the season with my wife and my parents, who don't do Halo. They know I love Halo, but they don't participate. So it was fun to be able to watch with them. And my dad in particular was, I forget his comment like verbatim, but it was just like, man, Halsey really screwed it up. I think that was at the end of episode 8. I feel like fans of the show, not Halo in general, were able to feel the full impact of Halsey. I think Natasha did a good job of portraying her as this determined person. There was some depth in there, like that she did have that moment with her daughter that was honest but also dishonest at the same time. And then where she's left on the run, but then she outsmarted everybody, even the viewers, to whereas, she deployed her clone and was able to escape. She's going to continue doing what Halsey does. And one thing that left me, and maybe this is a conversation for the recap episode, is like, does Halsey become the developer of the Spartan 3 program now? Like, she's off on her own. She did the Spartan 2s. I don't know, I forget if they referred to them as Spartan 2s in the episode or not, or in the season or not, but like there's nothing to say that she's not going to just do it again. So I feel like that could be a path for her because she's determined to bring humanity to this, this next level of evolution.
That could be a very interesting path, and it would make sense that she's kind of continuing to take things in her own hands. But my reservation for that is the amount of time that they would have to devote to develop all that, like in universe and silver timeline time, because canonically, and I granted this is core canon green timeline stuff, after the Spartan 2s were like starting their deployment, and like after they had a little bit of like missions and stuff, then they started doing Spartan 3s. And so at this point in the silver timeline, you could have the Spartan 3s already being in the early stages of their like abductions and trainings and things like that, or I guess recruitment. I don't think they abducted people for Spartan 3s, so there could be some of that. But I don't know, I feel like Halsey's gonna try to just go on her own type of research to find Covenant artifacts. Like I think that's her, or Forerunner artifacts rather. I feel like she's almost becoming more and more in search of this, because I mean that's kind of true to her core canon itself. Like she just wants to consume knowledge, and these Forerunner artifacts like fascinate her so much. So
but now she's on the run, like she's an outlaw, so she's gonna need protection. So I feel like there's gonna be a moment in season 2 where she's like, oh hey chief, meet this thing that I created that can defeat you, like there's going to be this like battle between a Spartan and whatever she's created to defend her.
Maybe so.
But overall I am happy personally with Halsey.
I agree. I really enjoyed this episode with Halsey, and for the most part I enjoy Halsey overall in the season. There's a few scenes that are just like, I don't know, rub me the wrong way, I guess. But generally speaking, I think the way she's been interpreted and changed for the screen and the silver timeline, I think were good choices. I think they fleshed out the events that we got with the show. I like it, and like Natasha keeps saying in all of her interviews, like she can't wait to play Halsey again, and I can't wait to see her play Halsey again, because I think they're going somewhere with Halsey that could be very exciting.
I mean, just think about just one more comment on her. She like, again, the course of the season, she was able to gain the trust of a bunch of 6-year-olds, right? Like they had scenes specifically where it's like, hey, she was relating to this little kid, right? So there's depth there, but meanwhile she has ulterior motives. She has all these other things to do, and then she's able to like protect her accomplices in the Spartan 2 program by taking the blame, but then still surviving and being sent to Wakanda to, I don't know, do stuff. And then she's able to end up escaping from, Reach and faking her death. Like she did a lot of stuff during the season. So I feel like I think she was written well, and I'm happy with where she is.
Now I want to go back to something that you said like 10 minutes ago, and you mentioned this a little bit on the commentary, and it's something that Kiki mentioned, and that's she during the Sydney Goodman interview for this episode. I forget what the question was, but Kiki's response was that like she really loves the fact that this show allows people who haven't played the games, haven't played the books, maybe have never even heard of Halo, are able to also experience Halo. But more specifically, having people who love Halo experience Halo with other people that they care about, and having like a medium to do that. And so you said that you have watched the show with your wife, with your parents, and have gotten connection with them. And I feel like Kiki has had similar experiences. And I want to touch on that, and I think you just wanted to touch on it as well. Just like I don't know what we kind of think about that, because I agree with that, and I think that's one of the silver linings isn't the right word, but like I think it's something very unique that like not a lot of franchises offer. And I think it's definitely something that needs to be valued when criticizing the show, that yes, things were changed, maybe for the better interests of a general audience, but also like at the end of the day, these creators are just trying to make something for the fans to experience and experience with other people. How would you respond?
Yeah, so a couple things. The Halo fandom now that we have been presented 9 episodes of a TV show, is probably feeling that same conflicted emotions of like the Marvel fans or the DC fans or the Transformers fans, or anything that was like established in one medium and then brought to another medium for kind of this broader audience appeal thing. Like we are finally going through that, right? Where it's like, oh, well, it's not the same way as it was in the comic books, or it's not the same way it was in the original, cartoon, and this and that. Halo fans are finally dealing with that, and it's not an uncommon thing to fandom in general. I appreciate being able to sit down and watch. I love being able to sit down and finally watch. That was one of the reasons I was most excited about it. Is like, okay, my wife likes to watch action stuff, and she's into sci-fi stuff too, and my dad loves sci-fi, so I get to experience this. They've never been able to, well, they've never wanted to get into the game because they're not gamers. They're not. There takes a certain person to be a gamer, right? To be like a first-person shooter gamer. There takes a certain level of interest and a certain level of escapism that you're wanting to be comfortable sitting down on your couch and just shooting stuff, right? Like that's not for everybody. It's obviously there's a giant community that enjoys it and is able to just enjoy it. Whereas, if I sat down with my wife and handed her controller and say, okay, you just need to shoot everybody, she'd be like, what? I gotta shoot everybody? That sounds terrible. I'm not gonna do that. So those people that maybe disagree on a certain level with what you're doing in a video game or in Halo specifically now get to enjoy all of the non-shooty stuff. All of the story elements that we have come to love and enjoy and absorb through all of the media. Now it's presented in a way for them like, oh, okay, I can see why this is appealing to you. And there's fighting and stuff like that. And that all makes sense because it's written into the story in a certain way. And we need to go do that. And I'm used to seeing that on certain sci-fi shows or certain action shows. But there's enough story here that it's, like I feel like a lot of times when you're playing Halo or any video game, you're like, oh, all you do is just go kill stuff. Like, what's the fun in that? And you're like, well, no, there's a story. Really, there's a story. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like here, this is the story, right? Granted, it's not the same as what we're used to, but this is the story. This is the interaction with Cortana and John and Halsey and Keyes and UNSC and the Covenant. These are all of the story elements that I've grown to love and enjoy, but it's not behind a controller, not behind a console.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't been able to really share the show with anyone. I mean, I kind of introduced my coworkers to a little bit because, they know I do the Halo podcast and all. But yeah, I think I like I said, I agree with Kiki and I agree with you that like it's definitely good for us Halo fans to, because all we love to do is just talk about this franchise. And it's like, and anyone who knows us outside of the podcast, like, it's such a big part of our lives, which is why we do all these community and podcasting type of things, that like to have something, another thing to like share with someone. So instead of saying like, oh, well, the books are great, the games are great, and the comic books are great, now we can add the TV show like to that list. And it's like the TV show is great for these reasons. And if that individual that we're trying to connect with, doesn't land on the video games or doesn't land on the reading, but lands on the TV show and that type of entertainment, then yeah, that's something that they can go out and experience, and they can get a taste of what this franchise is. And if it's not for them, it's not for them. But I mean, personally, I've had a full range of spectrums from this season of things I've really, really liked and loved and enjoyed, and other things that I haven't really liked. And I kind of question, I don't think there's anything in the show I hated, because I think that's a very, very strong word. But like, there are definitely things that I disagree with or I don't connect with. But like, I could still enjoy the show, and I do enjoy the show, despite having that full range of feelings towards different events and things. Yeah, I think it's great that Halo is being available in a new way for people to experience, because you'll get those individuals who haven't played the games or haven't read the books, and they'll watch this show and want to now find more. Like you and I, we played the games, and the games brought us to the books and the comics and now the TV show and stuff. But it's perfectly okay for someone to pick up a book at a bookstore and start reading it, and it be Halo, and then now they go out and search for the next bit of the franchise that's their new favorite aspect of it. So
it's another entry point.
Exactly. So I think it's great from that regard. And I think there's more to kind of talk to on that, and the overall appeal to the general audience as opposed to a Halo fan, that I think is a conversation for next time.
Yeah, I just do want to touch on it a little bit. Let me just collect my thoughts here really quick. There is the broader audience question, right? And again, you guys will probably touch on this during the next episode. But changes were made in order to appeal to a broader audience. I think Halo has been on a TV screen before, right? There's been multiple versions of that, but those were all in the mainline canon. The choice was made to differentiate things. Again, we can relate this to the last episode because it's just Chief Tana at the very end. That doesn't happen in the mainline stuff. I'm curious from your perspective if the changes were necessary in order to appeal to that broader audience. Like as a Halo fan, and I'm sure a lot of the Halo fans, and I think it's like if you followed Twitter or any social media, like every episode that had action in it, Halo fans are like, well, this feels like Halo now. And then every episode that had a titch of action or no action at all, they're like, oh, this show's terrible. It's like, I think to appeal to the Halo fan, there needed to be some Halo alien killing in it. They felt like they couldn't do that for whatever reason. Do you feel as a filmmaker that is warranted? Like, is the audience for a military sci-fi shooter similar to what we see in the games? Is that indeed smaller, and they needed to let those action sequences be further spread out, so that my mom could sit down and watch the show and be like, oh, this is okay, I'm okay with this killing right here because all this other stuff happened? Curious in your thoughts on that.
I think it all boils down to what the show writer or the showrunner and the writers and producers and stuff, like what type of story they want to tell. Because there are thousands and thousands of stories out there, and they all have their own approach to what they want to tell, what they want to show, and who the characters are in those stories. And you'll have stories or sci-fi adventures that are just action-packed, and they have so many different thrills and different types of set pieces that make that show or movie or whatever, what it is. And on the other hand, you'll have, not very action-y heavy, entertaining pieces. And I think they want, like the showrunners, I think wanted to go a little bit more in that direction, because yes, Halo as a video game is all about your your minute-to-minute interactions and gunplay, and that's a large reason why we enjoy playing those games and learning about the characters in them, because it's the characters around the interactivity of a video game. But what film and TV are able to really do is, like, yes, you have your big action, superhero movies, Transformer movies, and Tom Cruise movies. You do get those character moments where you really get to connect to different characters and how they appear on screen. You have games now that like from Naughty Dog that have been compared to like a cinematic game because it has character embedded into its story so deeply that you care for the characters while you are playing this game. But like, it's not so much said as like, oh, it's a really good game, so to speak. It's also described as a cinematic game. It's like a movie. It's like a TV show, because those are the strengths that movies and TV have, is that they have these different like emotional connections with these characters. Not to go too far down a tangent, but like, I just watched a movie called Swiss Army Man with Paul Dano and Daniel Radcliffe, and it is an amazing movie. And it's the only time I've seen it, but like, it is truly just a story about these two people lost in the woods, and one of them is dead. And that's just the greatness of it. And like, and the way that the writers and the storytellers go about in this story to make it just a character-driven story as they are lost through the woods. That's all the story is. And they find way to incite action, all that kind of stuff in there. So Kiki said this a few times, that she wanted them, and the other creators wanted to have an opportunity here in the TV show to make a character-driven story, to focus on who these characters are instead of who the characters are with the action that we also have in the games. And I think that's where a lot of these changes kind of came from. That's why you have the idea of these pellets, the idea of the memories being like intentionally wiped. And so there's some deception there. So you have character conflict. I think there is a very specific reason why Miranda is now also a doctor, and she now is very much half of her father and half of her mother to create this family drama within the show, and I can kind of go down the list, but those are the ones that are kind of coming to my mind. That like, I think, like, are they necessary changes? I think is not really the right question, because I think some of those changes like are effective, and some of those are not so effective, and you may disagree, or Josh may disagree, or whomever. But I think they are necessary changes in the sense that, like, if you want a more character-driven story that's a adaptation of a video game, then you do need to make those choices, and you do need to ask those tough questions, because otherwise you're just recreating the game and doing that minute-to-minute stuff, which is what they didn't want to do. Now, you could just do that. Like, you could just recreate the video game, and that's a valid choice, and a lot of Halo fans, honestly, would just love that. One of my predictions halfway through the season was like, well, what if this end of the season just ends them finding the ring, and then now they're on the ring, but that's the first game, but that's what they don't want. So, like, are they going to do that? And so it's this confliction that I'm having, and it's like, yes, I really enjoy the game and I want to see things from the games, but Kiki and the filmmakers and the TV makers, like, they want you to experience something that isn't the games. They want you to experience Halo as a TV show, and that's why they're making this Silver Timeline TV show the way that it is.
But I feel like that them wanting to do that isn't clear. Like, Actman did a thoughtful analysis, and it was after season or episode 8, and the community was very frustrated with just that sex scene and all that stuff. He asked in that video, and I think it's a very telling question. I'm just going to ask you, because you probably didn't watch it. would you rather have a retelling of Halo CE on screen? Would you rather have this season be CE, just retold, or would you rather get this?
I feel like I really would like this.
Interesting, okay.
Imagining a visual retelling of CE would be great, but like we already have it, and we already have a book that is the exact retelling of the game. And if we had the retelling of CE, then that's all we would get. Whereas now we have this story, we have this season, and then we're going to get a season 2. And maybe we'll get a season 3, and we'll go on as long as it is. You know, like if they keep Atriox along and they start developing the Banished, or they really dive into the Forerunners and we learn more about like the Librarian and maybe the Didact, I don't know, but like at least the Librarian and the conservation method, and like why there are the Mantle, or why there are Reclaimers and the Mantle, all that kind of stuff. Like I would rather like see more of that than just one season of CE, because it's still going to be different. It's still not going to be a one-to-one sort of retelling, no matter how hard you try. It's just not, because it's the way of just transferring stories between mediums. There will be even slight discrepancies to where it's just not going to be the case. But like even still, like yes, it would be amazing, and that's where my hesitancy would come from. Like I would enjoy the hell out of a CE TV show or like movie. I don't know. I like the boldness that they're going with the TV show. And yes, I do have my things I don't like about it, but like as a Halo fan and like watching the show and like getting worked up from seeing some things because they were done very well, like has me optimistic about the future. And I just think that it's better spent of the creators' time than to just recreate something we've been already living with for 20 years.
You know, as I've been thinking about this as I asked it and heard your answer, and back to my earlier point about me being able to enjoy Halo with my family and my wife, if this series, again, personally, I would love a retelling of CE in, you know, live action. But if this series was a retelling of CE, it would also be a horror show. And I don't think my wife would watch it with me because of the flood.
Yeah.
Like CE, you forget, when you think about CE, you think about like the silent cartographer mission and like, you know, the very last couple missions. But halfway through that game, it is a horror game.
Yeah.
My wife doesn't do scary stuff, so I wouldn't be able to watch it with her. So I think they hedge their bets, and we'll see if the flood comes into this timeline at all. I would assume it needs to at some point.
I think it has to at some point.
The flood, you know, we've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast, any of our podcasts, is like the flood is the core of Halo. Yeah, I think that they hedged their bets and they needed to, and that's why I kind of mentioned it as this is the origin story of Chief and the origin of Halo, is they needed to establish all this stuff. Like this is they're setting all the rules and all of the key characters and they're reestablishing things. Say, okay, this is what Halo is now in the Silver timeline, and then we'll move forward to all the other weird stuff that we get.
Another thing, now that I've had a little bit of time to think about it, to further defend my answer, is that like what the show allows you to do as well is pick and choose things from Halo and kind of make them all kind of connect in whatever time you need to do, because it's not canon. So like if you retold CE, like you're locked into everything that happens in CE. You know, even with like Alpha Base and all that sort of side stuff with the Marines that you get in the Flood novel, but not the actual game. But like you can have an instance where we might have the Banished in season 2 of this show. Like for better or for worse, like just that possibility, like to me is more interesting, because I'm curious, and you know I'm an optimist, so like I have faith that they'll be able to do good things with it, even though some some things they didn't do well with this season. But yeah, I just think in the long run, in the grand scheme of things, I think what they're doing is the right path to go down, even though it's not the nicest path.
From a Halo current fan standpoint.
But even from like a TV fan, like if you're like I mean, Josh was going on about how like him and his wife are. I hope Josh listens to this episode since we keep referencing him. But like him and his wife are just like television fans. They just love watching TV. So like when they have issues with the show, it's because it's like
it's a show issue. Yeah.
Yeah, and which is 1000% justified. It is what it is, but like I think Halo fans, just some of them know what they want, and this isn't it, and they aren't necessarily wrong, but like they can't be, I don't know, too negative about it, and I'm not saying this correctly because like they could be negative, but like they can't just be like volatile.
Well, it's short-sighted because I think we've talked about, or I feel like I've talked about somewhere, is, if this is successful, it opens the door for other Halo stories, right? So maybe the Silver timeline exists in the same real universe that we are in right now, where they do a retelling of CE for us.
Yeah, maybe so.
Because this was successful, and this will go on to be 7 seasons, and then, oh, cool, then we also get this little side story over here. So I think it is a little short-sighted that people are frustrated, to a point of just not supporting it. It's like, well, if you support it and, Paramount and 343 say, hey, this is a successful thing, we're going to continue to do this, and maybe this justifies, like, I could see, like, an outcome of this, this final episode, even, like, we talked about Kai, like, how everybody loves Kai, like, I could see a spin-off on Kai now, right? Like, that's how TV works.
Yeah.
So stuff like that could be rad, and hopefully in our future, to take this same conversation in just kind of a different light, is they could have done, they could have approached this 2 different ways, right? Like, the Halo universe exists. There's lots of stories to be told in canon. They wanted Master Chief to be at the core. And in order for Master Chief to be at the core and make this as appealing as possible to a wider audience, to give it the biggest chance, I feel like they did make the right decision in kind of going off main canon to tell us this story. The other decision they could have made is say, well, we could just go tell this cool little story that happens over here with this ODST fire team, or, they could tell this little story over here that exists, like all those short stories that exist. There's lots of stuff, but then I feel like the Halo fan would want a Halo in it or John in it. So the fact that it's Halo, but there's no Halo, then there's a little bit of a conflict in that, in going that route.
No, I agree with that, and I stand by that, because I also see the comments of like, all they needed to do is tell a story about this, and it's like, it's not that simple.
You have to establish the brand as a successful on-screen brand.
And they're thinking about like multiple seasons, and also the game is going on, and so they're probably finding ways to tie in or something like that, and so there's so many elements that even I don't even know about, just because I don't work there, but like I can just imagine the process. So anyway, I think we're getting to nearing our time here. I do thank you for the the conversation with all that, because I think it is, there are valid questions, and it is topical with what's the rest of the internet is kind of going on about. And all I say is that our listeners, just to kind of be part of that conversation, and like, if you disagree with the 2 of us, that's fine, but that's just what we think.
I mean, I personally, like, I knew that I was going to be on this episode, and it's exhausting to be a part of internet conversations. So like, I've popped up a couple times here and there, but to be defending the direction and trying to be positive, consistently over the last 3 months is exhausting. And I've chosen to like not engage in a lot of it. just because there's so much negativity around the show and the direction and all that sort of stuff. It's exhausting. So, I've popped in every once in a while, but I feel like, being on the show and just trying to be a level-headed, this being my platform to be that kind of like, here's the good and here's the bad, and it's not the end of the world. It's still Halo, right?
No, and I even got a comment on on our last episode where the guy, like, a listener messaged me and was like, wow, you guys were actually a lot harsher about the episode than I thought you guys would be because of like how you guys usually are. And it's like, I mean, I'm just saying what I'm saying. Like, it hits differently for different people. I think keeping a level head is like the most important thing, and I feel like in our podcast as a brand is generally pretty level headed in our criticisms, and again are generally defending kind of just like what it is, because like, yes, although the vocal internet can influence some changes in like the game space with like since it's a live service, but like I'm kind of using my philosophy with this that I use for like television and movies when I watch them. Like I don't really think too much about a movie or a TV show about, oh, what I would have done to make this better, because like that's really not the point of reviewing and analyzing TV and movies and stuff. Really, it's all about like, what was the directors or the show writers like intentions, and was it a success or was it not? And then you can start asking yourself, well, how do you think it would have been a better like success? And so that's why I kind of say my bits about like what I think Kwan's storyline should have been, because I just don't understand the filmmaker's intention, and I feel like that might have just gotten lost in the writing room or the editing room or the production room. But it is what it is, and you just have to watch it, and if you don't like it, you don't like it. But you as an individual really can't change anything, and it's and just kind of being mad about it is not going to make you or anybody else feel any better about it.
Being mad about it isn't productive. It's, constructive criticism. Like, you can be upset about it, I guess, but, you just need to realize that there are human beings on the other side taking in this feedback that are working hard on trying to Kiki and everybody are trying to give the Halo fans a good experience. And I think on a lot of levels, they have done that. Obviously there's some frustrations as well. So I think they're always listening. I know you want to wrap, but is there anything else from episode 9 specifically that we should touch about? Like, I feel like there's good interaction with Silver Team, like that last scene, and we talked about during the analysis is like that was good, right? Like them gearing up and like having some little banter with each other, and then fighting in coordinated, attacks and all that sort of stuff. Like that was good. Like that was presented well. That last scene. There were some issues that I had with it, but overall, it was a great, fun action scene. You got to see brutes, you got to see grunts, you got to see elites getting blown off the mountain. You got to see the prophets.
Condor, the prophets, the artifact, the ring, even. Like, yeah, the whole ending sequence, that like 15 minutes it was great. I thought it had great fight choreography, interesting camera movement, first person view, and emotional beats too. Like Riz gets freaking stuck. Like I was waiting for Riz to unstick herself and throw it, but it didn't happen. And like half her shoulder got blown off, and it's like, damn. And then we already talked about the death of McKee, and that hit me personally. So I think that yeah, this action sequence was great. And it did feel very Halo, because Halo's all about the minute-to-minute gunfights. But, I don't think we would have gotten that emotionally invested to it if we didn't have certain scenes from the rest of the season. Especially with, like, Kai and, or, like, even Kai crashing in the ship earlier in the episode, like we talked about in the commentary, like. And, even though we didn't get so much screen time with Riz, and she still holds true and all that, but, like, when her arm got blown off, it was like, well, damn, like, they're in a sticky pickle right now, so.
I was going to say she is the one that was the least developed of all of the Spartans, which is a little bit of a bummer. because I feel like I knew what they were going with her, but she didn't have enough. Like, she needed like 10, maybe 15 more minutes of screen time where there was a little bit of interaction with her. She just didn't quite get there. But I feel like Vanek got a little bit more in this last episode.
Yeah, Vanek had a few moments. Vanek also had a great moment with Kai in episode 5 when she was like, "You ever wonder why the Covenant are fighting us?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Why are you asking me these stupid ass questions?" I'm like, "Fuck, Vanek." But yeah, like, no, I agree. I think it was a great ending, like, sequence. We kind of talked about the overall, what did we say? Chief Tana.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of good in this episode. I thought it was a great season finale, and I am no more less excited than season 2 than before I watched this episode. You know, like, I'm either the same, if not more excited for season 2.
Yeah, this episode was conflicting for me because and I mentioned it before, but it's like there was like that. Okay, is this good TV or is this not good TV? And it was like there was a lot of like those conveniences. It was like, ugh, really? They made that decision? Like, that was too easy. But then there was a lot to enjoy, you know, about the episode and the season as a whole. So it was a conflicting final episode for me. Again, I came out of it. I watched it the first time. I watched it now 3 times. The first time I was just like, and then the second time I was like, okay. And then the third time is like, I'm finally at ease with it. I'm like, okay, this is what we have. I need to process and look forward to season 2 because I am excited to see where they can go because I know all the directions that they can go, right? And the cool thing about having the silver timeline is we don't fucking know where they're gonna go with season 2, right?
They can pick so many different things.
The Fall of Reach, the Flood, the more Forerunner stuff. They could find the Halo. Like, there's all sorts of stuff they could do.
That's why I'm excited for the show, and that's why I'm happy that it's silver timeline because we don't know what's next, and Kiki and everybody else involved has a relatively blank canvas that they can just pull cool things from and do it instead of retelling what we've already experienced.
And at some point, they could also, so like they're obviously feeding things from the established green timeline into the silver timeline. At some point, they could do the reverse, right? Like, there could be this cool thing where, I don't know, in Halo Infinite, Kai shows up. How rad would that be? Or some other thing that happens in season 3 or 4 all of a sudden shows up in Halo Infinite because they've realized they were onto something or the fans loved something and it made sense to pull it in.
Halsey's ship, they've said that, like, Halsey's ship has not had a visual representation, and the TV shows the first time they've been able to do that, and they've said that, like, you know, her ships only existed in, like, internal documents, so, like, the ship in the show is Halsey's ship, so, like, if that were to ever get, like, a game representation, then, like, obviously the game is the core canon and the show is the silver timeline, but just by happenstance it premiered in the TV show, if you will. So there can definitely be other elements of that going forward, and yeah, that's what's so great about the franchise.
Absolutely. Love it. We're getting to that level. We're getting closer to Marvel. We're not there yet. We're getting there.
Yeah, no kidding. But all right. Are you good there? Any last things you wanted to say? I think I've said enough I needed to about this episode, and I look forward to next episode or next week to talk about the series as a whole, which is what our listeners get to look forward to. It will probably in the same sort of release cadence as our other ones, and I think that will be our last episode for season 1. Kind of makes sense. And we'll discuss about what's next for Halo TV Plus.
I think that episode's going to be fun because you have 2 theory crazy people on that episode. You got Tom and Aaron. They love spouting their Halo theories, so that's going to be a fun conversation.
Yeah. It's going to be a long one. I know it will be. I'm going to make Aaron edit it. Like I was saying, if you're interested, Alex Wakeford releases his Silver Debriefing blog posts every Monday on Halo Waypoint. This blog is a source to recap the story of each episode in detail and serve as a hub for additional show-related content and provide some more detailed insights into certain things. So if you want to read the Silver Debriefing blog for Transcendence, you could head over to Halo Waypoint now. But Colin, thank you so much for joining me again on Halo TV Plus.
I need to give you some shit for one thing, because I've listened to the whole season. At the beginning of the season, you kept calling it Iridanus. And in the show, they kept saying it's Aridness.
Aridness, yeah.
And no one corrected you the entire time. So I am here in the penultimate episode to say it's Aridness 2.
Aridness 2. Not Iridanus 2?
It's not Iridanus 2. It's Aridness.
I'm going to find some audiobook that I listened to where the audiobook reader said Iridanus, and I will attribute my pronunciation to that individual.
Yep, it's their fault. Exactly.
But thank you for the critique.
Yeah, this has been fun. I appreciate the opportunity. I love this. I love that we dove into this. You've done a great job with the show.
I forget. I think we said this before recording, but like I really have loved talking with individual people over the course of these 2+ months, and hearing like their specific opinions and reactions to things as opposed to a roundtable discussion. And it's truly been a pleasure working with everybody involved. So thank you for being with me on episode 9.
Absolutely. Tons of fun.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us for episode 9 and for all of the previous episodes that we have recorded for Halo TV Plus. Like I said before, Halo the series is exclusively on Paramount Plus. It is all out. You don't need to wait until Thursday morning anymore. You can just watch all of the episodes if you haven't seen them for any reason, but you're listening to episode 9. I don't know who you are. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find every episode to all of Evolved's shows and what it produces on our website, evolvedhalo.com. It also features shows like Discord, Patreon, Xbox Live, and other contact information. Shout out to Mission Debrief and Builds with Blocks, 2 shows that Colin primarily produces on Evolved, and I think our Halo Infinite coverage of Mission Debrief is nearing the end. Is that correct?
Oof, we're getting there. This is the longest season ever. Yep, couple more.
It's a trunch.
This is the open world did us in because we covered that. So we're 22 episodes in total by the time it's done. Oof.
Well, you can head over to all of our podcast feeds and websites to catch in on the Mission Debrief. Once again, another special shout out to all of our patrons for supporting Evolved and making all of our shows possible. You can head over to patreon.com/evolvedhalo to learn more. And finally, if you want to leave us an email or a voicemail about this week's Halo the Series episode, you can email us at podcastevolved@gmail.com, or you can give us a phone call at 205-EVOLVED, which is 205-386-5833. Once again, next episode will be a roundtable discussion about Season 1 as a whole, and I will be joined with more than one guest, which should be interesting and should be quite a long episode, so look out for that. Thanks for sticking around, everybody. I have been your host, Oran, and until next time, evolve.
Evolve.